today the leadership team of India Sotheby's International Realty, Amit Goyal, CEO, Samir Saran, Managing Partner, and Sudarshan Sharma, Executive Director, along with me. Adapting to the new changes around us, we are very excited to launch and welcome you to the fourth edition of the India Sotheby's International Realty's Global Luxury Realty Conclave. As always, we have an amazing set of international panelists who will, through today's Live Global session, present the current opportunities prevalent in the challenging times faced by all of us. Our panelists are highly successful professionals who have, through their vast experience, managed to innovatively respond to the slowdown being witnessed in the real estate industry. And we look forward to them sharing their key insights with us. I'll endeavor to moderate this session, keeping it as interactive as possible between the audience and the panelists. So please do send in your questions. Let's get ready for a gripping session and hear some honest and unprepared views, pretty much how they happened. A quick check on some hygiene issues. We are hoping to keep this session to 60 minutes. There will be three key tracks that we aim to cover in about 30 minutes. So 10 minutes for each key track and 15 minutes for question and answers. Viewers are welcome to keep posting questions as we go, but we will only take questions in the designated time slot picked by the analysts. A small housekeeping announcement in terms of this is for the Sotheby's team. Some people are trying to log in and they're having some difficulty to log into Zoom. So maybe you can just look into that. Okay, so before we move ahead, I'd like to briefly talk about India Sotheby's International Realty. Set up in 2014 in India, we are a team of over 50 professionals from private banking, luxury, hospitality, and of course, real estate business, bringing together decades of transaction advisory experience. Our global presence spans across 71 countries with 1,000 offices and 23,000 advisors. In the year 2019, Sotheby's delivered a global property sales volume of $114 billion. Our brand heritage, global network, and a unique prop tech marketing platform makes us the largest luxury residential real estate advisor worldwide. I would now like to present a video demonstrating that it is only your residential home that has stood the true test in these unprecedented times faced by all of us. I'm sure over the last 60 days that all of us have spent majority time at home, the value of our home would have at least appreciated mentally, if not on our balance sheet as well. So I'm going to move on and go around and let the panelists introduce themselves. Our first panelist for today is Mr. Ian Plumley, Senior Vice President, Middle East, Africa, and India, Berkeley Group PLC, joining us from London. Over to you, Ian.
Good evening, Ashwin. Good evening, fellow panelists. Thank you for inviting me on today. So I first joined the Berkeley Group in 1995 and was operational there for many years in the UK before coming out to the Middle East to set up a division that looks after the Middle East, Africa, and India. As you mentioned, Ashwin, the Berkeley Group is a FTSE 100 company, and we have over 60 projects throughout London and the southeast of England. So I hope today to be able to add some value to your panel.
Thank you, Ian. I now introduce our second panelist, May Bagai, who is a global real estate advisor from Sotheby's in New York.
Thank you for having me, Ashwin. I've been with Sotheby's for the last 7 years and based in New York City for the last 15 years. New York City is the home, it's a financial capital of the world, home to many leading families and individuals from all over the world whom I've personally had the opportunity to represent, capital appreciation, long-term yields and stability, currency appreciation. There are many reasons why the Indian nationals invest in New York, and I've had the pleasure of working with them, and I hope to add value to the panel here by answering any questions you have about New York City.
I think, May, you're going to steal the thunder as far as New York goes.
Thank you.
But thank you for being part of the panel. Our third panelist for today is Mr. Mohammed Ansariya, Managing Director and Board Member of Range Developments from the Caribbean Islands. Mohammed.
Thank you, Ashwin, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a pleasure to be with you here today. We really value our relationship with India Sotheby's. We've worked closely with you as partners for the best part of the last year. A little bit about myself. I started life as a lawyer, went on to be an investment banker, and founded Range in 2012. In that time period, Range has become the leading developer of luxury resorts in the Caribbean. And the key theme, which is through all our projects, is that anyone who invests obtains second citizenship of the relevant island within a very short period of time. Our flagship project was the Park Hyatt in St. Kitts and the Kempinski in Dominica, both of which we opened in the last few years.
Lovely. Our fourth panelist is Mr. K.T. Chandy, Partner, Corporate Tax and Regulatory Services, Private Business, Ernst & Young, India. Over to you, Chandy.
Thank you, Ashwin, and good afternoon to everybody. So as Ashwin said, I'm a tax partner with EY based in Bangalore, been a partner for a long while. And now I'm overseeing and leading the growth of the private practice in India as we've set up. That is to work with HNIs, with family offices on their succession planning and wealth creation journey, as well as private wealth pools. So that's the area that we are focusing with. And we are working closely with Sotheby's in India, and we value that relationship and partnership.
And that's the reason, Chandy, we've saved you for the last. Like they say, save the best for the last. You're going to be the, our star speaker coming in the third track. Last but not the least, we have our fifth panelist, who's a young, super energetic guy, Akash Puri, Director, International, Sotheby's International Realty. Akash, few words.
Thank you, Ashwin, ever so generous. Very happy to be here. In a nutshell, professionally, I'm an ex-banker with over 16 plus years of experience and have lived and worked in New York, London, Dubai, and Singapore. However, it is what I do that is more interesting than who I am. So I'm going to take a minute to describe it. Within 6 months of launching India SIR, we realized a latent need for quality service and latent need for our clients, for them to have a quality service and expertise to provide an end-to-end solution while they were going to purchase a property overseas. since there was a huge demand for London, we launched an India desk with our counterparts at United Kingdom, Sotheby's International Realty, and I got shifted to London. Combining the synergies of our Indian offices with the market knowledge of our counterparts overseas became so successful that we launched such desks in New York, in Seattle, Toronto, Dubai, Italy, Colombo, to name a few. Well, ideally, I should be saying I'm very humbled to say, but I think I'm super excited to share that with the support of all my colleagues at India SIR, we've crossed a milestone of 100 million USD in overseas real estate transactions. And as they say, this is just the beginning.
Absolutely. We are here to put another zero to that, Akash. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to once again welcome you all to kickstart today's session. We're going to start with a very quick 5-minute overview, and I'm going to get Ian, May, and Mohammed to come in and give a brief overview of your markets respectively. So let's start with Ian.
Thanks, Ashwin. So London, quite a remarkable city, but not, none of you will be surprised to know that obviously with the pandemic that has struck the globe, London has frozen, has paused. The real estate market undoubtedly for the last 60 days, as you say, is somewhat in limbo. But the good news is that that has also created amazing opportunity. And the real news straight out of the blocks actually is that demand for London real estate has really come to the fore in the last few days. I was reading a report from one of the leading institutions, research institutions today, about how the number of inquiries that real estate agents are receiving, and this is a Rightmove, Zoopla, and On the Move portal, combination of portals. They're up some 30% over the average of the last 5 years. So whilst there is opportunity, the London market has gone very quiet. Sales are down probably 65–70% over the period. Opportunities exist. Bank rates in London and the UK have come down to virtually zero, which makes the cost of money ridiculously cheap. Loan-to-value ratios have increased significantly over the last few weeks to encourage buyers to come back. So what I can talk to you about today is the opportunities that London offers. And as I mentioned earlier on, with some of the projects, 60+ projects that we have, we can fulfill those opportunities for your Indian customers. And I'm pleased to say we've been working with Akash for nearly three years now, and he is a superstar, and we've been very successful together.
Good to hear that you're upbeat about the future, Ian, in terms of the property sales. I'm going to put this question to May as well, for her to give an overview of what's happening in New York. And May, you're going to make it quick because we are already running 2 minutes late.
Okay, well, I'll keep it short and simple. New York City is on sale. We're offering cheap discounts for buyers to move forward. Because, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, sales are down dramatically. On average, we sell about 1,000 apartments a month. Sales are down to 400 on average for the last couple of months. So, that brings the opportunity. A lot of investors and opportunists are back from Asia and Middle East, and I'm in touch with them on a daily basis, and they're really looking for deals and they're making sight unseen offers. We're seeing some crazy deals take place and happen that would never materialize in, just about 3 months ago. So, New York City market is, frozen temporarily, but it's going to come back up, just like it did post 9/11, post the recession, and investors that jumped in at that time doubled their money in the last 10 years. So we're going to see that. We're going to see that kind of appreciation happen, maybe not at that level, but to a certain extent, people are going to benefit a lot from this.
So I love that 3D factor painted by you, May. Deal, discount, and double your money over the long term. That's the 3D factor New York is going to play out, right? So Mohammed, to you, a minute to you to cover, give an overview.
Thank you, Ashwin. Unfortunately, there's no 3D in Grenada, which is the current island where we're working in. We're developing the Six Senses project there, and everyone who invests gets second citizenship of Grenada within 3 months. Given the current COVID pandemic, you know, second citizenship is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity to the high net worth individual. It provides a hedge to some of the challenges that they're facing in their home market. You know, certain individuals are negative economically. They're worried about, you know, the civil society in the countries in which they live. And second citizenship provides them with an insurance plan. And what's unique about Grenada, which we'll touch upon during the latter course of the discussion, is that as a Grenadian citizen, you have an easy and expeditious route to the United States. So it's not only a citizenship, but it's also combined with migration. And hence, over this lockdown period, we've seen sustained and increased demand coming out of India.
Super. Good to hear that. So let's get into our first track, which is basically going to be focused on New York and London. We have all been hearing about the subdued sentiment due to the pandemic. Considering New York and London are global destination cities, how is this period any better or worse than the global financial crisis? In my opinion, every adversity presents an opportunity. I would like to start by hearing from Ian and then May on the kind of opportunities the pandemic has thrown in for the HNI.
Sure. Well, let's start with the first point, which is that where we are in the cycle, the property cycle, and
Right.
And where our economy, the UK economy, sits currently by comparison to 2008, 2009, the global financial crisis. We're in a much different position. Back in 2008, 2009, the property market was pretty steamy, and frankly, it fell off a cliff within about a year or so, causing all sorts of pain for lots of people. But you know what, rather like May suggested, the UK has bounced back. It dropped and then it's recovered, because it recovers every 10 years. Prices double in London in particular every 10 years, and they have done since the war. But we are now in a position where with Brexit, it created something, and you know, we used to think Brexit was an awful thing to talk about, but actually I'd rather talk about that than the pandemic. But Brexit creates an opportunity. Prices became slightly softer. And we've now gone into this current crisis at the beginning of February in a much safer, stronger way. That the economy is stronger. Property prices are more realistic, more affordable. So when we come out of this, and as I said earlier on, we're about to start doing that, we will be at a very level and very stable environment. So opportunity now, in my view, is, and you know, I'm a developer, okay, but if I read from some of the international research houses, you see that whilst prices may remain soft for the remainder of this year, that if you look at the 3, 4, 5 year forecast, we are going to see across London in particular, which is a bit of a microclimate, increases in value anywhere between 8 and 20%, which is quite a broad spectrum, admittedly.
Sure.
If you take the middle of that at somewhere around, you know, 14, 15% over the next 3 to 5 years, that's surely the opportunity that we're seeing today.
And Ian, if I may just add to that, it's also got to do a lot with the fact that there is a shortfall of supply and demand.
Absolutely, no, you're right. We've never managed to build enough property in the UK, particularly in London, with the demands that we have, being an international city. You know, we need 60,000 houses a year. We're building 35. What's also happened with the pandemic is some developers have stopped building, and I'm pleased to say the Barclay Group have not.
Absolutely. We're going to come back to you, Ian, but
okay.
Now, you know, May, it seems that London was at a peak in 2008-9, and this downfall is very different from where the market was. What's your take on that for New York? And what kind of an opportunity do you see?
Yeah, so London is a very strong comparable to New York. You know, investors that are looking to park assets in New York also sometimes look at London. You know, our economy this is very different. This pandemic, it's not, it's not a global recession. This is just a temporary pause. The economy was doing great, before this whole thing started. Our sales were also, the market was just back up. So, this is just a temporary situation that we're in. And, the global recession was directly linked to real estate, and it was very different in many ways, and it lasted much longer. This is a short term, this will last for a quarter or 2 quarters max, and the market will come back up. The stock market is already rising, and, we're going to see a lot of things are very different here, and they're more temporary. And this is not going to last.
So I'm going to stop you there. You said the stock market is already rising, which all of us are seeing. But historically, have you seen any sort of, lag that the real estate market shows vis-a-vis the stock market? Is there, a lead or a lag that you've witnessed in the past in the New York real estate market?
Yeah, so real estate is a lagger. There is obviously, like, it takes time for the sale prices to settle and be negotiated, the contracts to go through. It's not a stock that trades on a daily basis. Sure. And the volatility impacts the trading price. So, but here in New York, what's different is, like, we still have the demand. Yes, the market is frozen, but buyers that are looking in this market are looking for larger homes. They're looking for full floors, half floors, instead of a 2-bedroom, because they're homeschooling. They also need a space for their home office and their gyms. And so, when this market comes back up, it's going to be much stronger. This is not a recession that we're in. It's just a temporary pause.
Got it. So I'm going to, recently you may have seen there was a statistic that was published, which was on the liberalized remittance scheme flow by resident Indians, topping at a life high of $18.75 billion for financial year 20. And this was a 36% growth we saw over the 13.78 billion number in financial year 2019. Bulk of the spending, as indicated in the article, was towards education and travel. So my question to you, May, over there is, how are you kind of leveraging this to spur real estate demand?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So, at Columbia and NYU, a lot of the leading institutions in New York City and surrounding areas, a lot of the graduate programs and leading institutions, the Indian nationals are very attracted to send their children for a better education, better future overseas to these schools. And what happens is, when the children get permitted to go to these schools, and they're looking for housing, and a lot of times, instead of renting for those 4 to 6 years that the child is in undergrad to grad school, they end up purchasing the property, because if they get a good deal, instead of paying $10,000 a month in rent, they'll buy the property for $1 million, and instead of paying $120,000 a year to pay somebody else's mortgage, they'll build equity. And over 6 years.
So here I see the banker talking, right? May Bagai, the banker talking in the face of a realtor. That's good.
If I could just add to that, May, not only, like, for example, the opportunity today in New York, not only the market is subdued and the prices are down, but like you were saying, in 3 to 4 years, because the property is kept for as long as child is being educated, there is also a currency play that comes into it, and we've seen over the years that the USD has only risen, and so that type of appreciation also comes. So it becomes a double whammy here. You get a property cheap, you can also get there's a prospect of a currency increase in the portfolio add.
So Akash, what would that put together number be for an investor or end user, or more an investor to start with, including your expected capital appreciation, rentals, and currency aspect?
Sure. So from a conservative point of view, I would say we could look at 5% in terms of capital appreciation. We could look at 2 to 3% when it comes to currency play. And we could look at about, and this is because I'm taking data was, over 40 years, not, just in the recent past. And also, if you were to rent out that property, you could get between 2.5% to 4.5% where you buy, depending on how central you are, you could get as rental yield. So you're looking at double-digit figures.
Of course, and that too in a developed economy. Super.
Correct.
Good point.
Correct.
So I'm going to, sorry, somebody had a point?
Now, just thinking a very strong, stable economy.
Absolutely, absolutely. I fully agree with that. It's a stable blue chip economy with a lot of liquidity in the asset class. So I have one last question for Ian. Ian, where is the value add in your portfolio of 60 projects for clients who are looking to buy in London? You know, you may give some sense from area perspective, ticket size, and of course return expectations of London. Very briefly, I just have 2 minutes for you.
Very briefly, 60 projects in 2 minutes. Okay. I think the breadth of my portfolio is probably where I'd say we had the value, because we're able to take you from a £250,000 apartment outside of London to a £6 or £7 million property within it. And then the range within there is just huge. But I think that there are two things to value which I think appeal to the Indian market. If the Indian has already got his money out of the country using the LRS system or through his own endeavors, and has money outside of the country, then there's opportunity currently to take advantage of the homes that have been built and yet have not been sold. So we call that our stock position. And, you know, with the market slowing down, our construction hasn't stopped, so our stock position has built. So I think there's opportunity there, whether it be in central London or in fact outside in some of the cheaper areas. So that's one key component I think we have, which is a reasonable amount of stock. But of course, the other thing is, if you're having to use LRS and you're wanting to take money out over a period of time, which I know Chandy, I'm sure, will touch on how to do that, then what we can offer is 2 or 3 year payment plans, where over time you'll be paying off sort of 10, 15, or 20%, and no more than that, and then 80% on completion 3 years later. So that gives you the opportunity to move the money using the LRS system, but also then take advantage of what will be a rising market over that period as well. So you get the capital gain. And in terms of yields, we can't compete with in New York perhaps, but what we have is a combination of yields anywhere between 3.5% and 4.5%, with capital growth as well, which gives a complete package return on investment.
So Berkeley Group is very well positioned to cater to the requirements of investors across locations, budget points, and cater to customized payment plans as well.
Absolutely.
And if I could just take 30 seconds, you know, why Barclay Group is actually one of my favorite developers in the UK is for the fact that you are known for your placemaking. Anybody who's invested in your project over the years has got phenomenal increase in value. You have a great concierge service. It's a lock and key, concept, because you want to have a hassle-free service. It comes with the 10 years builder's guarantee. So, you know, if something goes wrong, you know that there is a company that will take care of you. And because of the fact that you always select those destinations where the access to central London or otherwise is easy, like, you know, close to where a cross trail is being formed, for example, in one of your developments, or next to the tube station, it makes to and fro to your development very easy and very rentable.
Thank you. Yes, you're
Sorry,
right.
I had to add my 2 bits. I'm a full fan of Barclay Group.
Thank you, Akash. You're a good advert.
The only missing link is the backdrop, Akash.
Yeah.
I think the backdrop's in my blood. That's never going to change.
I've got a few questions for both Ian and May, but we're going to come back to you guys later on. I'm going to go over to the second track for today, which is citizenship by investment. And you know, this is really, in our opinion, this is a fast-paced emerging theme within the HNI and UHNI community, especially the next gen. So let's start this set with Mohammed and Akash. So Mohammed, could you speak about the uniqueness of the citizenship by investment scheme offered by Grenada and how it compares to other countries in the Caribbean and across the European Union? I hear that you can beat the EB5 entry into the US, both in cost and timeline. So you may want to touch upon that as well.
Sure, Ashwin, thank you. And Grenada over the last 12 months have really catapulted into pole position in the citizenship by investment rankings globally, not just in the Caribbean. And that coincidentally, there were a number of legislative changes at the beginning of 2019, which was also the same time that we were invited to enter the government by the government of Grenada and develop the Six Senses Resort. So the key advantages, first of all, global mobility. You can travel to 140 countries around the globe, the UK, Schengen, European Union, Russia, China, all of Latin America, without the need for a visa. Now, I appreciate global mobility is a distant dream for us given the COVID situation, but right. I can assure you in the next few months it'll return. And when it does return, obtaining a visa if you're from certain countries will be more of a challenge. So Grenada has one of the widest global mobility propositions out there. Secondly, it can be obtained within 3 months without the need to leave your house. All due diligence is done following an online submission today. The government has taken a very proactive view. Thirdly, it's cost effective. A $220,000 investment in our resort plus some applicable government fees qualifies you and your family for second citizenship. That investment has to be kept for 5 years, following which there's an exit plan. And the fourth reason, which you really hit the nail on the head, Ashwin, Grenada has become a proxy for the EB-5. A little bit of history, Grenada was invaded in 1983 by the United States, and as part of the reparations of war, it was awarded an E2 visa treaty, which basically says at its simplest, if you're a Grenadian, you can then subsequently invest in the United States in your own business, a minimum of approximately $100,000, and within a 2-month period, you and your family can obtain a residence visa, an E2 visa in the United States, valid for 5 years, renewable indefinitely. Your children benefit from public schooling and special advantages at universities. So it's become a really quite an attractive and unique package. And as I'm sure that Mr. Chandy will focus on, if you're not in Grenada or if you're not in the United States on the E2 visa for more than 122 days, you're not taxed on your worldwide assets like you are if you are under the green card scheme or you're a citizen of the United States. And also a second citizenship can confer upon you some advantages, especially if you're not resident in India under some of the schemes.
Mohammed, I'm just going to rewind a bit, and you mentioned a $220,000 investment in our resort. Can you just talk a bit more about that and give more clarity to the audience about the nature of the investment and how it is an investment where there is some sort of protection or return or whatever is the case?
Sure. So we're developing the Six Senses Hotel in Grenada. And I hope, or I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Six Senses brand. It was acquired by Intercontinental at the end of last year in a mammoth transaction. And it's their #1 luxury brand globally today. So it's not a needed interest that you're buying. You're investing in a real estate investment trust, owns the asset, it's a 100-room hotel spread over 24 acres. Well designed for the luxury tourist in the post-corona traveling era. There's 39 swimming pools. There's no need for social interaction if you don't wish. So all of these things have been featured into the design of the hotel. It's Six Senses and Ranges brand philosophy and very similar to our other developments. Why I'm stressing on these points is it's the beauty of the resort and our reputation as a developer. I mean, our first project was awarded Best Hotel in the Caribbean by CNN. Our second project in its opening year was put on the Wall Street Journal bucket list as a must visit in 2019. And I believe the Six Senses will be more beautiful than our previous 2 projects. It's this aesthetic beauty which will drive your investment return. So we expect a return of between 2 to 5% and, as the hotel approaches stabilization. There's a clear exit after 5 years. The share can be sold to someone else who wishes to obtain citizenship, whilst the original investor maintains his citizenship in perpetuity. So a very viable exit proposition, and all structured in accordance under the laws of Grenada. And the government has done extensive diligence on the project and the offering documents.
So, my takeaways are it's fast, it's economical, there is government is supporting it, there is track record from you guys as a developer, and I guess there should be a, post the lockdown is lifted, you're going to take all the panelists in a chartered aircraft to the Caribbean?
It'll be my pleasure, and we'll stop in London and we'll stop in New York on the way. So we can all share the joint experience.
Only if Akash lets us get away from the Portugal to Grenada. So Akash, I'm just going to come to you in terms of giving us your top pick for a citizenship by investment scheme in the EU, and just talk about it in brief.
Okay, so I've got the message, speak less, we're short on time. So basically in Europe, people like to go there for a lifestyle which is different than what they're expecting when they take a passport from Grenada, or want to get into the US. So there are ways of doing it. If you're okay to have to wait a long time, then it gets slightly cheaper. If you want access immediately with a passport, it gets more expensive. So if, for example, if you're looking at Cyprus, you're looking at 2.15 million euros, and you get your passport in a few months. Malta is 1.1 million, just about a year. When you talk about Spain and Portugal, both of them give you a citizenship by investment and a passport. These basically vary in time. So Portugal, you invest 500,000 euros in a real estate asset there, and you can get it. You get a permanent residency in the 6th and the 7th year, you get a passport, whereas in Spain, you get it in 10 years. So depending how much you're okay to wait, these would be the best two options.
Okay. But I think Mohammed has a better option wherein you don't need to wait beyond 3 months.
Correct,
right?
correct. Mohammed's option is within 3 to 6 months, you get a passport. 3 months after that, you get into the US. So within 9 months, 450,000 USD approximately, and you're in the US.
So Mohammed, I have one question for you. How many Indians have you sold this to in the last year? And has there been any increase in the interest levels in the last 2 months?
So that's to me, or that's Akash?
No, that's to you, Mohammed. Akash has already given in. He's caved in.
Excellent, great. So look, we haven't seen a slowdown during lockdown. I think, as you rightly mentioned, people are in their homes. A lot of them are looking at their businesses and saying, look, there's been an economic halt here. Are we going to restart our businesses? Does our home country provide us the security that we're used to? And a number of individuals are executing with us, Indians in India, NRIs based in the Gulf and beyond, and saying, you know what? I've made some money in my previous business. Now let's focus on moving to the US. Our kids have got to a certain stage. So this pandemic has provided an inflection point. Imagine in your next lockdown, I know how expensive real estate in India is, but if you took the same money and you invested in maybe New Jersey with Mai, or one of somewhere else in New York, you get a lot more value for your money, and space is a premium at a time like this. So a lot of people are saying, let's get a second citizenship and let's migrate. And today it's all about migration.
And Mohammed, I just want to add a point there. The best thing about your program is you don't have to leave the country to get your passport.
Correct. In fact, you don't have to leave your house today. You can prepare all the documents. Your team and my team will work with them online, submit it, and 3 months will deliver it to wherever in the world you wish.
So I have just one last question before we shift gears. Akash, this is to you. And I need a short answer. Can Sotheby's International Realty provide a one-stop service for CBI-related queries?
If it's a short answer, absolutely 100% we can do it with a smile.
Good to hear that. I'm going to move to track 3, and I'm going to get Chandy in at this time to dive deeper into the regulatory and the tax aspects. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions in this session, as this is something which keeps perplexing the mind of the HNI. So Chandy, some broad questions from my side. One being, what are the current legal regulations for acquisition of property overseas?
Thank you, Ashwin. So, the broad answer here is for an individual to acquire assets overseas. Since India has exchange control regulations, they are bound by the approvals that the Reserve Bank of India provides. And as it stands today, there's an automatic approval to remit up to $250,000 US, and this includes your current and capital account spends. So $250,000 can be spent by an individual resident in India for overseas travel, for overseas holidays, for overseas real estate, for whatever they would like. And this 250,000 is individual specific, and it runs financial year to financial year, so April 1 to March 31st. So you could have a family of 4 members send out $1 million.
And we can include minors in that?
So, minors has been a big debate for a while, but the Reserve Bank of India came out and said yes, in an FAQ, that you can include minors. There are some procedures to be followed on minors, in that they have to co-sign documents, etc. The guardian has to co-sign, and income will be clubbed whenever it arises. But yes, minors can also remit.
I'm going to spin this back to Ian. Ian, how can minors be part of property ownership in London? Ian, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was going to be the first one to do that. Minors unfortunately can't be part of the property deal, Ashwin. Under 18s are not allowed to be on the land registry certification. But that doesn't stop. It depends on, and I'm not going to step on Chandy's toes here, but that depends on how the vehicle is set up from India to acquire the property, and that's beyond my pay grade to discuss that one. Chandy, that's probably back to you, sir.
Okay, so in which case, Chandy, what do? The minor appoints an appointee, and that person comes on the paper for property ownership, because as I understand, accumulating, that clubbing is no longer permissible by the Reserve Bank.
So there are two distinct aspects here, Ashwin. The first is a minor can also send money out.
Sure.
Family members can open an account together. So what the RBI is saying is, if you are going to send money out into one bank account, all of you need to be signatories. And if you're going to buy property, all of you need to be co-owners. So that's where we'll face a challenge on co-ownership and how a minor gets onto the title deeds.
Correct.
We'll have to look at the, in the UK, for example, if minors can be represented by their guardians, which
Right.
is their parents, that could be an avenue to do this.
Excellent. Excellent. So what are the different modes for acquisition of property by a promoter or a resident Indian, personal, company? Can you give us a little outline on that, Chandy?
So we spoke about we spoke about the LRS, which is a route available to individuals, and then there is a route available to corporates and partnerships, which is called the ODI route, the Overseas Direct Investment route.
Right.
Under this route, an Indian company can, for legitimate business purposes, set up an overseas arm and remit up to 4 times their net worth. The rules go on to say that once you set up such a company for legitimate business reasons or for housing your staff, you can buy residential property. But the value of that property, there are limits to how much you can spend on a property. It must not exceed 15% of your turnover, last 2 years, etc. So there are certain limitations. But 4 times net worth can go out for legitimate business purposes. So if you have a trading entity, manufacturing entity, whatever else, you can and you set up a holding company in London or in New York, you can remit and then purchase a house in the name of that entity for the purposes of your business.
So just a small nuance there, Chandy. This 15%, which is one of the parameters that you just mentioned, is of the turnover of the parent company or the company?
Parent.
Lovely. Excellent. Excellent. So we've got to, via media, to buy property overseas, individual, as well as in the company route through the ODI route, right?
That's right. And also people who wish to emigrate. If there's an emigration and as part of emigration, you can go to RBI and there is, if I'm not mistaken, $1 million that can be taken out through that route.
Right.
So that's another route that is permissible. And for emigration, you can seek a specific approval of the Reserve Bank of India as well. So emigration comes with a different set of, and if you can make your case, you can exceed the $250,000.
Which I'm sure you and your team can help with at EY.
Absolutely. We can work with your team and we can, get this done.
Excellent. Excellent. So, I just have a couple of questions that have come up on the liberalized remittance scheme side. So one question that has come up is, can a resident Indian gift money to their spouse for overseas remittance using his own LRS limit?
Yeah. So your LRS limit is individual specific. So the husband can have or a wife can have $250,000, and they can gift to the in India, if both are residents, you can gift to your spouse. So 250,000 can be gifted to the spouse. That becomes the spouse's ability to repatriate money. So 250 plus 250 can be sent out from one source of income, but gifted to the other person. Both of them need to be co-owners. So you have accessed the route under two names. Now, both those names need to appear on the property papers or the bank account when they remit jointly.
And what if one of the spouses is a non-resident Indian? How does that work? That's more from my side. How does that nuance fit in?
So non-resident Indian for FEMA is you're less in India for less than 180 days, or you've gone out for an indefinite period.
Right.
A non-resident, and non-resident is you're already overseas. Now, if the spouse is a resident and you want to gift your non-resident, you can do so, but your 250,000 limit would be utilized in just sending it to your spouse. If the spouse has income outside, there's no limit to what can be used from foreign earnings.
Okay. Okay. So I have another question on LRS, which is under LRS, are resident promoters required to repatriate the funds or the rental income that they may have earned outside India?
So, the LRS route and the beauty of the LRS route is that this is a general permission granted to individuals to send up to $250,000. And in that approval, in that general permission that has been granted, they permit LRS accessors to keep the exit proceeds and the earnings overseas itself. You are not compelled to bring that money back to India. Okay. So as an example, if one were to purchase a house for $250,000 and sell it the next year for $300,000, you don't need to get that into the country, the $300,000. On the $50,000, because your gains, because you're resident in India, you'll pay income tax. That's a different matter. But the $300,000 can circulate overseas.
So just to take that nuance, what you mentioned that you have to pay income tax, then am I subjected to, is the investor subjected to any double taxation, or how does it work? How does he file his returns?
So here, and to take this example, $250,000 house purchased, rental income of 10,000 pounds earned per year. That $10,000 10,000 pounds will be subject to tax in the UK because the asset is situated there. Subject to those specific laws, there will be a tax liability for the individual overseas. The person is resident in India. The resident's global income is subject to tax. So you will offer that 10,000 pounds also for tax in India, and you will claim a credit for the tax that you paid in the UK. So that's how it would work.
Talking about the credit, what is the implication of this newly implemented TCS?
Yeah. So TCS is it is a provision that's already there in the law in a limited way. If one purchases a house or if one purchases a car, there is a 1% TCS. So what the government has said that if you're repatriating monies under the LRS, there is a 5% TCS that will kick in. This is a tax that you need to pay on sending the money out. But this tax is available as a credit against your regular income tax. So if you're, if there is $10,000 paid as TCS, you will get a tax payment certificate. And if you have capital gains in India, for example, you can you can offset this TCS against the tax you would pay on your capital gains. And this provision kicks in from 1st of October of this year.
So it's been postponed from 1st of April to 1st of October.
That's correct.
So whoever is planning to remit monies in the financial year FY21 should take advantage of the next few months and remit.
That's right. As in, most of the people who remit under LRS and 250 will have other income in India. So it's not so much of a loss, except for the currency, fluctuation. So people are very concerned about currency fluctuation in India as well.
Actually, it's not about the loss. It's about, lower availability of capital. Even people are in any case grappling with the fact that they're constrained to remit only 250,000 in a financial year. So even 5% lower is kind of reducing their purchasing power overseas, and especially when the whole family comes together. So Ian, I have a few questions for you, which are currently in the UK, the real estate sector is fairly stable. Reason being government assistance in ensuring people temporarily are financially sound. Once the lockdown ends and government aid stops and really reality is felt, I believe the real estate sector will fall and may fall hard. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I saw that question come in, Ashwin. I fundamentally disagree with that, because the fundamentals of the real estate market are not set like that. The government has many schemes in play which have underpinned the real estate market for several years and will continue to do so. In fact, the government have written to all the developers asking us to continue building, asking us to continue providing social houses, which are needed for key workers. So I don't see that we're going to suffer considerably. And the demand, as I said earlier on, the demand is significantly higher. The pent-up demand is significantly higher this last few days almost than it's been for several years. So those signals, and I'm talking about now investors from the markets that I operate in, which is across the Middle East and India and Africa. We also have 6 offices in Asia, and those offices are currently trading at levels that were last seen in January. So the international demand into London in particular, in the southeast corner, is huge. We're not building enough properties. We're now building less because developers have not been developing over the last couple of months. As I said earlier on, we haven't stopped, but 60% of the developers did. So you put all that together, and the fundamentals are that we will pop like a cork at some stage through the course of the next 6 months. There won't be a fundamental collapse.
I'm looking forward to that toast from your side when you pop like a cork, Ian. I have a question, Chandy, for you. For an Indian working in Singapore, looking to invest in US real estate to earn rental income, what would be the best option looking at tax impact? A, invest directly. B, register a firm in Singapore to invest in US property. C, register a family office in Singapore to invest in US property. If you have a short answer to that, we would like to take that up.
So, if you're working in the US and in Singapore and you have earned in Singapore, you are not shackled by Indian regulations. You can use the money however you want. So whether you invest it directly or through a family office, it's depending on the size of your income and the diversification that you plan through that office. As far as India is concerned, even once you come back to India, monies that you earned outside, you can retain outside. There's no compulsion to bring into India. So monies that you earn outside, you can utilize, dispose as you deem fit. Technology depends on the size and what all you want to cover.
Okay. So
Ashwin, if I may just add something to that, this is a very good example of the question that you asked. And and something that you'd asked me earlier about, can we deliver everything quickly? It's a partnership with EY. And and how they help us, with our clients. So whether be it India or if they're in London, they get the same service. They connect us to their counterparts in London or in Singapore or in the US. So wherever a client would want to buy, we could get the same tax advisory services through this and make it a more complete option for them.
Absolutely, can't agree more, Akash, on that one. So this is the next one. It goes to Ian and Chandy. How does UK property inheritance tax impact India-based property owners? You want to go first, Chandy?
I'll leave that one to you, sir.
Right. So India today, we don't have inheritance tax. So inheritance tax is on the annual. It might come in. So if you're a resident and your assets move or they are transmitted on an event, there is no tax in India on your progeny acquiring or getting that asset. So today there is no tax. The UK will have to look at residency rules and see if that person is not a resident. Even then, would there be a cost for the movement from generation to generation? But in India, just to add on to that, inheritance tax, as I was mentioning, is, people are talking about it in these times. It's a revenue generator. Most developed countries have inheritance tax. So structures to facilitate movement across generations without inheritance tax can be weaved into the structure to acquire overseas assets.
Sounds good. Mohammed, over to you. For Grenada, how many family members of the investor are eligible for the passport on one single investment? Wife, kids, parents, etc., etc. Can you qualify that, please?
Sure. So Grenada globally has the most generous definition of dependents. So everything which you mentioned, Ashwin, plus siblings. So siblings, as long as they're not married, they don't have children, and they're above 18, can be included with one investment unit. Parents, grandparents, and down the chain, children as well as grandchildren. One thing, if I could just add on, just going back to Chandy's, one of Chandy's last comments as well, is Grenada has also become a very interesting tax planning tool as well. For NRI Indians, there's a big concern about global taxation. And as Chandy just mentioned, inheritance tax, and there's never a double taxation treaty which covers inheritance tax. So also being weaved into these structures are sometimes Grenada citizenship intergeneration. I just thought I'd throw that point out.
No, definitely. That is a valid point. Chandy, as expected, another one for you. So I believe through the ODI route, wherein a company is formed by the Indian company in the UK, is it possible to buy a property and let it out, as many from India have done using this method? Could you please clarify?
So the puristic answer is, once you use ODI, ODI is permitted for companies to undertake legitimate business activities overseas. Therefore, if you are a manufacturing company and you set up a manufacturing, a subsidiary to facilitate manufacturing or to sell the products, you can buy property for the purposes of your business or to house your staff. But then to start letting that out will become a real estate business, which is restricted for overseas direct investment. However, if you set it up and then you say, this was my operation, I bought 5 flats for 5 people, I'm reducing my size, now there's only 2 people that I need to provide houses for, therefore it is imperative that I lease it out. If you can build a commercial logic and not set out to start buying and renting, one can make a case.
And I'm sure you guys can put together that substance.
Yes, with the actual facts of the company, we can. Yeah, and the point here, Ashwin, is, all governments are closely reviewing all of this. And your opening remarks on the quantum of money that has left the country, that has set off the TCS, introduction on LRS. So one needs to be careful and one needs to be prepared for reviews so that you don't fall foul of the regulator.
Thank you, Chandy. Mohammed, for you, what are the inheritance tax implications in Grenada?
0. A nice short and sweet answer for you.
Absolutely. I love that. So on getting the Grenadian passport, can my child join a university in the US? We have another one for you.
So you know what? One thing about Grenada, which we failed to mention, is 25% of its GDP comes from education. The world's largest offshore medical school is in Grenada, and it's produced 1% of the world's doctors. and 1,000 individuals graduate from this directly into US residencies every year. So that's the Grenada thing, also a hidden advantage. And as regards the US, you get in-state tuition fee reduction based on you establishing the residency required in the US for the number of prior years. And that varies from university to university, what that year is.
Got it. Got it. So coming back to you, May, it's been a code of silence for some time. Any last words from you before we wrap up this session?
Well, I just want to say that, we're seeing an increase of inquiries from Indian nationals, especially during this time, because I feel people are sitting in front of their computers, they're doing their research, like Mohammed said, they're really looking at their plans long-term and seeing, where they want to have their children settle in the future. So we're seeing a lot of inquiries on student housing. We're seeing a lot of inquiries on individuals trying to buy large number of units, bulk units from sponsors and developers, because those deals can be negotiated and they can get a better value versus them buying just one unit here and there. So I think it's a good time to get into the New York market. Anyone that does jump in now will make money long term, because you're just getting in at such low cost basis, and it's still New York City. It's not pre-COVID, we had a very strong economy. Everything was functioning. Temporary, we're going through a tough time, but coming out of this, people are going to exit and have many benefits of being in the United States, in the strongest currency, in the strongest financial capital of the world. And, my team would be happy to help them.
Sure. One last question before we actually round this off, which is, why would we want to buy overseas now and not conserve our capital? To May and then to Ian.
That's a good question. Yes, of course, like you want to have assets be in the US, in India, but US offers a great diversification plan, so just like Chandi said, people are looking for their succession plans, and in the future, maybe the children want to settle there. It just gives you that insurance policy that, hey, in case their economies are volatile in the developing world, they can be diversified and have other assets parked elsewhere that are performing better than in India.
And not to forget the 3D factor.
That's right.
Yeah. So Ian, last words from you.
I would echo May's words. Security being one of the big reasons why diversification from money outside of economies that are having some difficulties. The UK in particular offers that strong, sound, historic growth, safe haven from for protection of real estate and of their investments. I disagree with her on one particular point. However, London, of course, is the global financial center of the world, which we all know, not New York. But joking aside, where I think, from this pandemic, Ashwin, what we have achieved is, as a business, we've evolved, we've changed. We're now able to do, as we are today, talking to 6-7 people across the world. We're able to do that anywhere now, and I can take any one of your customers on a virtual tour of every single one of my projects. I can show them all the facilities, the gyms, the saunas. They can meet the concierge. They can do all of this virtually. Look at the floor plan.
And even the view from every apartment.
And see the views from the apartments that have not been built, exactly, because of the way.
So I'm going to stop you there, but guess what? May seems to be back in favor. May, there's a question for you. With change in the geopolitical situation, as the trade wars are brewing, what changes do you expect from the international investor community for buyers in New York, and yes, for London as well? Very quickly.
So, we have a very international market, and it really, yes, we might be having issues with a country at a given time, but there are other countries. We house the most citizens from all over the world. So if one country is at a halt, like somebody else steps in. And so in the 90s we had the Japanese buyers that purchased. In the 2000s we had the Russians, and so every decade there's the nationalities change.
So
But
net, every bull run will have new sectoral leaders and new
Yeah.
stocks, and hence new buyers from new communities.
well, yes, wherever the economies are falling apart, those people come here, and we provide a safe haven, and they feel a lot more secure. And once the assets are here, they have so many options to work with.
Ian?
Exactly the same, Ashwin.
Okay, I'm just going to then go to Mohammed before I finally wrap up. Mohammed, this one's for you. Would I need a visa to visit India if I use the citizenship option of Grenada, or can I get a PIO card?
So I think, yes, you can get an overseas citizen of India card. It's available online. I believe it takes less than 90 days once you have your second citizenship, if you wish to go that route. And if you don't wish to go that route, Grenada has an e-visa treaty with India. And there's nothing you can't do apart from stand for political office or buy more agricultural land if you have an OCI card, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sparing the time with us today. And I hope the attendees have been able to take away never before kind of learnings from this session today. In case any questions were not answered, your advisors, part of the Sotheby's India team, remain at your disposal. We will see you next on June 2nd, same time, for our next webinar session titled Taking the Right Bets with Real Estate. Thank you once again and have a good evening.
For organizing.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.